This is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 222, aka 222.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. I am on vacation in Mexico. My wife is sitting right across from me here, and she can't even look at me while I'm doing this intro. So I'm going to keep it quick, if that's okay with you. My guest for this week, his name is Kris. Let me read his last name, Meulemans. God, Kris, I hope if you're listening to this, I'm sorry for butchering your last name. And my wife is laughing now. So Kris came on the show a while back. We had so much to talk about that we actually had to record 2 episodes. So he's back to back. This episode, show 222 and show 223, it'll be Kris. And we've talked about a variety of topics, mainly about the sales process versus serving the sales process versus serving the salesperson, and how that works in different industries, because Kris has been around for a while and he's been in different industries. He's been in different countries as well as a pre-sales engineer. So we have a lot to talk about. I'm just going to stop here and jump into the show so my wife would stop laughing at me. Good morning, Kris. How are you doing?
Good morning, Ramsey.
So we've been talking for 15 minutes and it was so interesting. We forgot to hit record. We're doing
it's what you get when two pre-sales people get into a room.
Yeah. We just start talking. So you are in pre-sales. Maybe you can share a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Yes. Yeah. So Kris Meulemans, I am in the technology world, let's say, for I think somewhere 25 years or plus, something like that, long enough. I've mostly done pre-sales work, but I've done throughout my career a fair amount of positions, also mostly connected with technology. And maybe interesting, I started out as a teacher, so all the way back in my career. And through all the positions that I've done, from like IC positions, individual contributor positions, or management positions, there was always that, how do we explain things to people? Because in reality, teacher training is one of the best trainings for everything, but also to become pre-sales. Because what you're doing in teaching is you're connecting what people already know to what they don't know yet. So and you have to show them the value of that learning, of wanting to learn. And that's exactly what we do in pre-sales as well. It's understanding where people are today, where they go to, and showing them that value of going to a new situation. So that's career-wise, I've worked a lot. I've worked for telecommunications companies. I've worked for EMC Squared, which was the storage company that then got bought by Dell, and that first bought VMware and then got bought by Dell. Okay. So I've also worked for VMware and for Dell in different positions, and then that was mostly in Ireland in international roles, and now I'm back in Belgium. So I'm originally from Belgium, lived in Ireland for 17 years, and now looking at pre-sales. The function I'm doing now is kind of called customer operations and services, and we've slotted pre-sales in there. But it's really about everything that's all the processes and the ways that in which we connect to customer value, and making sure that the bottlenecks towards performance that they're taken away. And that's throughout my career. A lot of the things I've been doing is just looking at what is the structure, what is the environment, what are the bottlenecks to people performing or to the process performing, and then just making sure that worked, because that works for technology. And you have things not working and you make them work, you get them to deliver results. It works for people, works for organizations. So that's in short. Which,
that's good.
Some of the stuff I've been doing. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna dig in a little bit deeper. Recently, someone posted that transitioning from teacher to SE creates one of the best SEs out there, and I kind of pushed back in the sense that there's a difference between
solving the problem, being doing demos, discovery, whatever, and training, which is what I see teachers do generally. Like you're telling people, especially at least I come from a Lebanese background where teachers tell you have to learn this. I don't care why. You just 1 + 1 = 2. Doesn't matter why.
Yeah.
So like, how does a teacher not fall into that trap of telling customers versus helping customers?
Yeah, I think, and to dive into it a little bit deeper, you need to look at between the difference between pedagogy and andragogy. I hope I'm pronouncing that right now, but it's the difference between adult education and what we often see as young people's education or smaller children's education. The pedagogy is what you're talking about. It's just like, here's some content and you just have to get that content in your head. Andragogy, the more adult learning, is all about getting you engaged in learning, showing you the value of learning, helping you through it, coaching you through it. And that's when I talk about teaching, and it's that last kind, is that really having people engaged, because it's like, if you want to learn really, and if you want to teach really, the content is there, but that's the basics. But it's like you have content and you have skills and you have attitudes, and creating that value to create a desire to learn. I think that's probably one of the most difficult parts of being a teacher. It's just, here's a bunch of content, go and learn it. That's easy. But creating that, it's a bit also, if you think about strategy on a strategic level, if you want to bring people along, you have to tell them a story that's valuable enough for them to invest their time in. And for me, that's the same in learning. You have to show people the goal of the learning, the value of the learning, and then you're getting them along. So it's my own things. Yeah, and it's a good question, really, because there is a big difference between some types of teaching and really accelerated and adult learning.
So I just learned 2 new words today, andragogy and pedagogy. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I feel so much smarter already. But yeah, I like that you said that you're showing the value to create the excitement to learn. And it's the same thing as sales engineer. You're showing the value to create the excitement to change whatever process you're in today, and to go into whatever process you want them to go in. Yeah. Nice. And like, you started in telecom, you went into IT. Yeah. People think they're similar fields, but they're not. Like, they're different technologies, different knowledge, different people. And now you're in neither. Right now you're in, what is the industry you're in right now? So
industry is 3D printing, 3D printing software. So it's software for manufacturing processes that use 3D printing. And to explain it really easy, when people want to use 3D printing, they always start from a design. That design comes from a CAD program, mostly, computer-aided design. And then they need to transform that from this design to something actually printed in real life. And that's not just pressing a button. There's actually a lot of things to think about to make sure that the quality comes out right. And we create software and a platform to allow people to do that in the most qualitative way. So in a sense, the company is called Materialize. It's a worldwide player. And the way I always look at it is, if people are serious about 3D printing, and then I say, if 3D printing really matters, then it's with Materialize, because there's other options as well, obviously. But well, it depends on what you want. So and that for me is already kind of, you make a distinction from the start. It's like, because you can go for, there's definitely other and most likely options that look cheaper. But if you then look at the total ROI, getting quickly to a good result, then if you make that calculation, it's your typical pre-sales. But then you come out with the company that I'm working with.
So I work in test and measurement. My customers are telecom, are the telecom industry. And the personas that I work with in the telecom industry, they're so varied. You have the user, you have the
Yeah.
manager, you have like the engineer who actually created the standard for the telecom thing that they're using. So the levels are different, and you kind of worked with multiple of these personas in each industry that you went in. What differentiates, I know we're going back in time a little bit, but like, is there an easier industry to sell into? Is like, what are the different personas that, and what is transferable between the industries that you've worked with? I guess these are the two questions.
Yeah. And then, so the first one is what easier to sell into?
Is it easier
transfer
or different? Like, how is it different selling to personas in different industries?
Because I typically take a step back, so I look at the process, which is always fairly the same. So I'm actually answering your second question first, apparently. So the transparency is the fact that you look at the process in how something gets sold, if I can use that word, how people start to understand there's a solution and a right solution for them, and that you help them make that understanding. So that process, that is always the same. It starts with a lot of listening, and the more you know already about the environment, the better, because then you have a quicker understanding then. But from the listening, it typically goes to finding a mutual. So it's the situation. I know I said to your earlier situation, pain, dream, but it's understanding the situation, finding the potential pain that a company or a person has, and then showing them a solution to that, showing them the dream of what can be with the right process, the right tool, depending on what you're selling, because it's so that to me is the transference, is that process. Is there an easier kind of industry to sell in or persona to sell to? I think if you come from a technical background, talking to the technical person is often easier, because you don't have to do the whole, there's not a lot of spiel. It's more, this works, you have a certain issue, I can show you how your life is going to become easier with whatever I'm offering to you. That, because pretty much if you're in technology, what do you not want? You don't want to be called at night. You don't want, if you're, for example, in data protection that I was in, you don't want your CEO or any CEO or director level person calling you and saying, hey, I've just lost all my files and not being able to return them. It's always finding that kind of, what's their pain points? And then going up, obviously, then you start talking more about, is this value in different terms? But you have to understand that to make, to transfer what their experience is into something that the person with the money purse is going to understand. And I think it's easier when that's, so the easier that is to do, to go from the problem and make it clear how much that problem is costing and how that can be reduced. The easier that is, and the more visible that is, the better. That probably makes me, that's probably, let's say, the closest I'll get to answering that question. But
that's good. That's good. So basically, like, if someone's been in their shoes, it's easier to sell. But like, I'm looking at your background. You were in telecom and you moved to IT, so you weren't necessarily in their shoes. How did you get to understand what the problem is? Because I went from Alcatel-Lucent, which is telecom, to test and measurement, selling to Alcatel-Lucent. Right. So in theory, I should have been in their shoes, but there are so many different teams doing so many different things. I was in the shoes of one specific team, and I thought I was in the shoes of so many others. And it took me a while to understand that I don't really understand what their pains are. And I had to come back and, I guess, relearn everything. So assume that I don't know anything, sit and listen again. So how does one go from not knowing what someone else's pain is beyond what marketing is telling them, because that's not always right, to actually deeply understanding what the issue is and how they can help the customer?
Right. I think you've given the answer in the question itself already, imposing the question. It's listening and really listening until it's in some courses that I did. We always talked about understanding the problem area, understanding the problem area and arena deeply enough, the problem space. And you can only get there by listening, asking questions, listening better, listening deeper, but listening in a way. I think this is something that pre-sales often do, and a lot of the time I do it as well. And we sometimes do it at home with partners, but it's listening to reply or listening to solve. Yeah, there are two ways of. We listen because what we want to do is we want to give a solution. And as soon as we think we've heard something that is close enough to a problem statement that we understand, we try to solve that. While if you listen to learn, and there's a great book about this, by the way. So, but listening to learn is really listening until you understand. And if you want to know about people's problems, listen to them. Just keep it simple and ask them. It's like, what are you running into? Like, what could make your life easier? And just going from there. Because when you say I started in telecoms, I did IT in telecoms. So I worked with telecommunications people. This was the called telecommunications, so it was glass fiber networks. So a lot was so my role was initially IT support, and then I built out the data. I got the amazing chance, I have to say, of building out the IT infrastructure for a data center. This was the hosting and housing era. Everybody had to have a hosting and housing center. And then went on in kind of solutions engineering, solutions architecture, and then also into management roles. So that's just to give that background a little bit. But yeah, to come back to your question, listening to learn. I think if you don't know, ask people and listen to enough people.
So I'm going to push back a little bit. I mean, yes, I agree. Listening is good. And for me, because I have like the same customers and I've developed a relationship with them over the last 10 years, I got to listen to them quite often. But a lot of us and I'm not sure how it works at Materialize, sometimes you have 1 hour, 2 hours to come in, understand the problem and show a solution. And for me, I maybe it's a weakness of mine and something I need to work on, but I never found customers willing to be as open as they should be in 1 hour or 2 hours to help us solve their problem. And no matter how much listening we can do, if they don't get them to open up, it'll be difficult. So how does that work? How do we understand? Because especially like if we talk small, medium businesses, there might be different pains, it's not always the same pain that we're trying to solve. How do we understand what the pain is in a short period of time through listening? How does that work in your mind?
I think there's two things there. One is how you come in to the customer. So you can come. A lot of the time we talk about the trusted engineer or the trusted sales engineer and all that. And it was a wonderful quote I heard a while ago that's really great, but you can't become a trusted person or a trusted advisor before the sale happens, because you need that before that, and that's what you say, you need that level of trust. So what then you work on, so in the front end, is become a trusted authority, which means that when you become a trusted authority by any means speaking, by having the way your salesperson introduces you, your company introduces you, you introduce yourself. It's always better for other people to do that. But by giving you already kind of a certain step up, because you know the environment, because you have studied their environment. Because when I say listening to learn doesn't mean that you don't first have to really really understand the problem space in a larger part. And I talk about industry problems, and so going from that trusted authority, and then I'm being a little bit in that same frame, being a little bit vulnerable. Like there's no authority that never gets it wrong. Yeah, that's so saying, hey, from all my experience, I've seen A, B, and C. I could be wrong, but what I've seen here is because a lot of the time, technical people like to find errors in what you're saying. So that's natural. I do it as well. So giving them that already kind of already diffuses that argument a little bit. Because if you purely come in as, and you all know the people, they come in and they're the big authority on everything, you can't be an authority on everything. So coming in as making sure that you come in as an authority, but then also being given that little bit of vulnerability. I could be wrong, but from my experiences, this is what I'm seeing. And it's testing the waters. Yeah, and they'll either react to it. I haven't, outside of one or two cases, found that people don't react to that. Yeah, you ask for their experience and their expertise, and you value them in their expertise. So it's you're not saying I bring all the answers. I have a lot of answers, but I'm here to listen to you, and I just test it out. So that's my approach to trying to get over that. It's and any of these situations, it's always in the situation. It's never as easy as just explaining it here. It's being flexible around that. From that, I try to think in structures and frameworks. Like, how do I approach a situation so that it becomes easier then to use that in an effective situation, and of course a lot of role playing. That's
I love what you said. I think if I were to rephrase it in my own words, I think you were talking about storytelling a little bit. I mean, you were sharing your experiences, how you've helped other customers, or how your company has helped other customers. And is your experience similar or different? You're asking the customer. And also, it's hard to build that relationship in 1 hour or 2 hours. For me, it's always the goal to build enough relationship that they will give me the next hour.
Exactly. Yeah.
So like, all right, we just did the discovery call. We had this conversation. I want to prove to you what I just said. Am I allowed to come back and do a demo for you?
Yes.
To show it to you. And all right, we just did the demo. We had an awesome conversation. We cracked some jokes. We laughed around.
Yeah.
Did I prove it myself enough to come back and do a proof of concept or whatever next steps that you see fit? So it's not that, like, we don't want to go in expecting that by the end of the first session, we're going to be friends and going out to lunch, but just, get to the second date, get to the third date. It's like a relationship. So, all right.
I fully agree. It's you're just building your authority at the start to come back. So
yeah, exactly. Just
then, if you're lucky enough and you come back and you get to that relationship, then and the usual technology, or even sometimes without using your technology, you can become a trusted advisor. I've had that myself with vendors as well, with technical and even salespeople, where at a certain moment you can't buy from them, or you're not just not looking for that, or it's just not the right timing. But they keep in contact and they do help you in a certain way. They're always there with a little bit of advice. Yeah. And when the time comes, it's that reciprocity is a strong. You could say it's a technique, but some people are just naturally as well. It works because you are going to come back to that person. And I've had it where after, it might be a year or 2 years, that I said, oh, now I have this certain need, I have this certain pain, and I know that person can help me with that. And then you contact them, and maybe they're still with the same company or not, but then you go back to that product or person.
But speaking of trust, I have a story that I want to share. There was a customer that was interested in one of my products. They need it. as it is today, but they also need future features on it.
Yeah.
And I fought to get them the features, but in the end, we weren't able to do it. There's enough business, whatever it is. And all of our communication was through email, which kind of sucked. Like I kept trying to get them on a call, but they didn't. In the end, I said like, hey, we need to jump on a call right now, you and your manager. And we jumped on the call and I told them, listen, we have these today. I cannot promise you that it will happen, like the future features you're looking for will ever happen. I don't want to promise you and then not deliver it. But this is what we have today. If it solves your problem today, please go for it. Otherwise, I don't want to sell you anything that you might not use in the future. The PO came in the next day. Just by being like, they were thanking me towards the end of the call for my honesty. I guess it's something new to them.
Yeah.
So just, being honest builds a lot of relationship, and hopefully this will grow in the future as well.
Yeah, it's what I always, a lot of the time when I have to regularly interview people as well for pre-sales functions, and one of the things of the tests we always do a little bit is checking like, how far will they go talking about something they don't know, or promising something they're not sure if they can promise, because that is really something. I explained that to them afterwards as well. Is when you're in pre-sales, you only have one word. Yeah, people trust you or they don't trust you, and building up trust takes a long time. But it breaks easily, and then it's hard to rebuild, or sometimes even impossible to rebuild. And that, to me, as a pre-sales person, I always had that in the back of my head, is I need to be able to go back to each and every customer that I've ever or potential customer that I ever worked with, and still know that what I did was the right thing. Like in pre-sales, we propose a solution that works in the best way possible, obviously, but we don't propose solutions that don't work, or that we know are not going to be valuable to the customer. And that, to me, is always has been a very clear guideline that sometimes has gotten me into trouble at some points. So So it comes back to you in a good way always.
Yeah. So this kind of creates like also sort of a disjoint between SEs and sales. I've seen, like, so we were trying to sell a piece of equipment. The customer was like committed to buy it, and we needed, in the past they would have needed 4 power supplies. Now they need 7.
Yeah.
And I told the customer ahead of time, like, hey, make sure you have 7 power supplies.
Yeah.
And my salesperson got mad at me because I jeopardized the sale. I'm like, they're gonna figure it out before or after. I'd rather tell them before so that they're not surprised after and not pissed off after. And it's like, oh no, it's like, just they'll figure it out after. I'm like, no. I will not be that guy who figures it out after. I mean, we're not gonna lose the deal, right? And if it's that important to them, and if it's that important to them, then we're gonna lose the deal after, right? It's like we're just delaying the inevitable. We're just wasting time. But
or you win the deal and you lose the relationship, which is
well, they can always ship the product back.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? False advertisement. We're gonna send it back. This is not what you promised us.
Yeah.
So
definitely. It's that pre-sales versus sales. I often look at it as we get it as well, and in every company you always have that pre-sales versus sales, and sometimes sales looking at pre-sales as, hey, they're there to serve me. Yeah. But the way I always explain it to salespeople as well is, look, we are as pre-sales, we're there to serve the sales process and the value of our solution to the customer, but we serve the process, not the salesperson. That is an underlying thing that happens. Yeah. But the drive is always to, how do we move that sales process along? If it's the right sales process, if there is, we do the diagnose, we do the design. If we know that we can design something that helps with the pain and it's going to deliver the right dream solution, then we go forward. There's an interesting thing you can do as well, and I think I think it was John Kerr that talks about it in his book as well, and I tried it out later, then is having your SEs do a shadow forecast.
Okay.
So if you're forecasting, so where with deals where they're involved, what do you see as the chance of this happening, and then but keeping it apart from sales, and at the end comparing it.
Yeah.
And I think the research that's been done on it is that typically the forecast from the sales engineers is much more accurate, because we tend to be a little bit more defensive anyway, a little bit more, not defensive, but we think about things a little bit more, and we see the risks a little bit more, so that it tends to be closer to the reality. So
I would agree with that if the sales engineers have access to the CRM or any of that. So I'm a hybrid. So I'm a SE, but I also have SEs working with me whenever I get busy. They have no ideas what opportunities I'm working on, and that's just the process. It's not because of me. It's just the company that they don't have access to Salesforce. They have access to Salesforce for tickets. So they're seeing more of a post-sales resource, which I've been trying to fight for a few years now. But going back to the process, do you see the process changing with the salesperson that the SE is working with, or is it always the same no matter what?
When you say the process, what is
the SE process? You were talking about, like, we were serving the process versus the salesperson, but does the process change if one salesperson is better at this versus that? Or is it always going to be, you want to be involved in discovery all the time, for example?
Not all the time, and it depends. So there's a few differentiations there. To me, it's like, is the technicality of the sale is a differentiation? How difficult is the technology,
right.
And the complexity of that. That's one differentiation, because and the other one is, and I'll talk about CRM. But from a process perspective, the process is fairly the same in terms of, you do the diagnose, the design, but in very easy, like in more let's say more product-led companies, or companies where the product has a very clear, is very easy to show and has a very clear way of showing value. A lot of SaaS products work like that. It's
maybe I should clarify. I meant like within the same company, within, let's say, Materialize. Do like, not all salespeople are the same way. Not all SEs are the same. But is the process remaining the same? Doesn't matter which salesperson, which SE.
Yes, the process remains the same. It wasn't, but so that's over the last 2 years, we've created that process to become the same everywhere. Because it's so the general sales process that sales and pre-sales follow is the same. They all work in CRM. That was a bit of work to get, and there was resistance to that at the start.
By who?
I'd say more sales and pre-sales.
Really?
Yeah, it's strangely enough, because you'd expect it. So there was a little bit of resistance from pre-sales, and I don't want to be working in pre-sales and putting all that stuff in. But from the showing the value of having your pre-sales engaged in that process, the sell was a little bit harder to sales. But it was in this environment. They worked in a certain way, so I can't. That's definitely something I wouldn't generalize. But in here, that was a difficult sale. To pre-sales, it was easier. Maybe also because I led pre-sales.
Well, but I think pre-sales is more process oriented.
Yeah,
pre-sales is more process oriented than sales. Sales is more like artistic, or I feel like doing this. So, well, I guess it depends on the person, but I find more pre-sales process oriented than salespeople. So I guess it was easier to adopt a process like using the CRM. So I like that.
Once we started looking into it with pre-sales, what became clear was that the data wasn't always in there, always as good. So then obviously, and as you say, and I fully agree there, being more process oriented, we looked at the bottlenecks and the flaws and why is this happening, and that puts certain onus on people to be more clear with what they were putting in, more correct with what they were putting in, which is a good thing and supported by the sales leadership. So from a sales leadership point, that was easy to sell.
Yeah.
It's all improvement of the process towards better results. But towards the people then that you have to get along, that sometimes they sometimes see that as a lot of overhead, and with a lot of salespeople, and that's that is, you can generalize a little bit more. There's sometimes the idea that hey, if I put everything in CRM, can't they just take all the work I'm doing and just get rid of me? It's like, yeah, but your value is not in putting that stuff in CRM. Your value is in the relationship with the customer. So once they understand that and how CRM helps them, then it works. But that was the big, I'd say that the big challenge and struggle was a bit to showing that CRM worked for them, because in a lot of companies, CRM is used as more a tool of a control tool, which there's a lot of possibilities in CRM to help you. But that needs to be balanced. Like, it's always a control element for for management, but then for people on the ground, it needs to be helpful. Because if it's not helpful, people are just going to stay away from it. They'll do the bare minimum for their goals, but they won't do any more.
Or they'll cheat the system. Like we had my previous job, we had to input whatever calls we made with customers into CRM as sales engineers or emails or whatever. So what my colleagues did was they just connected Salesforce to their email, and whenever they send an email, it just automatically goes into Salesforce. So a lot of emails were just, like, sure, we can do that. Oh, hey, how are you doing? Right, stuff like that, and it didn't add any value, and it just junked stuff up. So that's if it's not useful, if we don't sell the usefulness, they'll either not use it or find a hack for it. So.
It also, and a lot of that is also connected for me. Is are you using the right KPIs? KPIs are or OKRs, whatever, like, because that's more fancy now. But it's well, it has a different slant on it as well. But wrong KPI can do so much wrong, because indeed, if you set your KPI to we want to see X amount of activity in CRM. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get activity, but is it valuable?
And that was the KPR that they were going with. It's just whoever puts in the most active on Salesforce gets like a lunch or whatever.
Yes.
All right. I guess I'm never grabbing the lunch because I'm not doing whatever. I'm actually using the CRM for my benefit, not as a workaround. But I am. We're coming to the end of our time.
You'll be the timekeeper here.
So I just wanted to understand, like, you're global head of customer operations and services. You mentioned that at the start. What are the teams that work under you, and why did they decide? A lot of times you have like sales engineering, different than sales, different than customer success, and then they all report to a CRO or something. Why was it decided that all of them, or whoever the teams that are under you, are actually under you?
So it has grown to be that, and that's still and I'd say that's still in flux as well. We're still looking at what the best ways to look at that. Initially it was all more very local. So you had local management. There wasn't really anything global happening. Nor on pre-sales, nor on customer success. Customer success is the latest thing we're adding, and then you had customer services, customer support, that were all in some way connected to the customer and not pure sales. So for me, it was everything that's not. I look at everything that's not pure sales.
Right.
If you to make it easy. But how did it come about? Is if you look at a global company, it works up to the point that you have that you run everything locally. But when we started looking at now, if we want to serve our customers the right way, because when the company grows, our customers tend to grow as well. So how do we serve international customers that have questions on different locations? How do we make sure, because we also got more products, more technologies, that we have specialists But how do we deal with the reality that we can't, in every location, have a specialist for everything? Right. So as soon as you start looking into that growth and that scaling, you see that it becomes necessary to put some more, to look at things more structurally. So how can we, and a lot of that is not, it's not telling people what to do, but it's about how can we enable them to work in a better way together. And that's what, when people see the value of that, and maybe to illustrate that, in the beginning, there's one technology we only had very few people knowing it, but they were in one region. So it was very difficult for this specific technology then to implement with customers, because if you implemented it in a customer in another region, how do you work with that? Or when you have questions outside of your time zone. So now we've built it into skill levels and built it into a global organization where we can hand over cases as well. So we have a whole skills and knowledge matrix that runs across, that is visible to everyone, specialists in different areas that we make sure are aligned, that are for newer technologies or very specialized. We work more with an overlay system so that you have a few specialists that, the team that flies in. Yeah. But as soon as when that grows bigger, then it comes into the SKM, to the skills and knowledge matrix, and then we kind of grow a presence in more regions then. But my task is more looking at, can we fulfill the sales needs, the need from, and also the need from support, the need from, can we do that for our customers and for the questions that our customers have today, not the questions they had yesterday? Right. And how do we prepare for what's going to come down the next 1 to 3 years as well? Because that's also a constant kind of looking at, who do we need to hire now? Because you can't always hire the right person, like the exact person you want. You also have to grow them. And how do we get the right people now to grow them, that they're ready for those positions in time? So that's a constant balancing act. But that's also how it became more global. It wasn't just like a decision, we're going to make it global. It was more like making the function more global is needed to scale the company further, and for the maturity of the company, to allow it to go to that next level.
Nice. All right. So Kris, we're coming to the end of the show. I usually have the not so fire round. These are the same 4 questions I ask every guest, but we might have to do them in 5-round succession. So
I'll try.
We'll see how that goes. They're like, the first question is, what do you love about sales engineering? Which is kind of probably a long-winded answer, but maybe you can share with us.
It's never a dull day. It's always interesting, engaging. There's just like, it's the greatest job in the world. You get to do everything and get to learn everything.
I agree with that. All right, what would be one thing you would change about the role today?
I'd make it, first of all, in most cases, I make it very clear that pre-sales is a different discipline, so that you can train people in pre-sales, so that it's not glorified sales or not glorified technician. So that's probably the main thing. I can think of lots of others, but I'm going to leave it at that because of the time.
Works for me. Is there a resource you recommend to your SEs as they're joining the company? You said you built them, you help them grow. What is the resource you would recommend to them to learn more about sales engineering?
In resources, there's a few books that we use. Typically at the start, The Great Demo is one of them. I love the time I refer them to John Kerr as well. And there's one other that I use, but that's more about communication. It's the competent communicator. That's also about how do you approach messages. And for the rest, it's just like keep your eyes open, and take control of your career. I think and if there's something we're not showing you, ask us and we'll find a way. I have the best thing I ever did was get a really great enablement person in, a kind of an enablement manager, and she's just like, she knows the industry so well, knows the company well, and is so much working with people to get them to that higher level. So.
Is that a pre-sales enablement or sales enablement?
Yeah. Well, I had to call it sales and pre-sales enablement, okay. But it's the biggest value is in pre-sales enablement.
Okay, good. So last question of the not so fire round. What habit are you working on today to improve in your personal or professional life?
Listening and being brief.
Hey, you're succeeding very well. So,
and the brief part, I don't know.
no, actually, for the not so fire round, this was great. And I don't think you spoke more than, like, you spoke enough to give me an answer, I think. So as brief as you could be without being too short.
Yeah.
I think you're succeeding in that. Is there any question you were hoping I was going to ask you and I didn't?
I always, it's one of the questions I always use in interview as well. So that's why I'm laughing. There's so many things that we're still open to talk about. The ideal, I'd say the ideal pre-sales person and the tendency today of kind of the differentiation between what the tendency today to have salespeople brings pre-sales and sales see that almost as the same person, meaning also giving more sales compensation to pre-sales people, and how that works and what effect that has on authority. But that would bring us in a whole different hour. So.
What are you doing next week? We'll do part 2. But I'd love to talk about those.
Yeah.
Kris,
I say customer success is one of them as well, but that's it's less pre-sales, but it's like the difference between it's something that I'm discussing a lot these days, is the difference between customer success as a goal, like the customer centricity that you want, and customer success as a task, as an area in sales, because there's a lot of confusion around that in sales as well, and I see a lot of things happening because people don't make that differentiation. So, all
right, seriously, what are you doing next week? I'll leave a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes if that's okay. Definitely. So people can reach out and connect with you. But this has been great. And I'm looking forward to the next chat.
Definitely. Ramzi, it was a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you, Kris, for coming on. Thank you guys for listening. Stay tuned for next week's episode with Kris, where we continue this conversation. We discuss other topics that we wanted to talk about. We couldn't today because we started talking and we couldn't contain ourselves, I guess. So check it out. The hotline is still out there. The price might be going up by the end of the month. So will be going up by the end of the month. So if you want to lock in your price early on, you were looking for some professional help from yours truly, that'll be me, in case you're wondering what that means, because I didn't know what that meant for a long time. Anyways, I'm rambling. How about we just see you next time? So with that, for myself and my wife, who's sitting right here, say hi. We're signing off.